Okay, today is December 13th, 2010. Jim Manco is here with us on this nice blizzardy Monday afternoon here at Lakewood Country Club, and he will be telling us his life story and such. So Jim, welcome, and we hope that you have a nice morning time frame where we can talk and bring out the history of your life and in relationship with Lakewood Country Club. So would you please start us by answering the question of where were you born?
Well, I was born in Rocky River. Well, I was born in Fairview Hospital, but I grew up in Rocky River and in 1949. And we lived on a street in Rocky River called Bates Road, right across from the cemetery. And the beginning of my golf career was as a little boy. We'd sneak across Detroit Road, go up the creek, and head over to Westwood Country Club, hole number 4, which was the best sled riding hill in Cuyahoga County. So that was a beginning of my involvement with the country clubs. But I came from a family of 6, my dad, my mom, and then 4 siblings, 2 brothers, my brother and myself, Mike and myself, and then we had 2 sisters, Jean and Sue. And that was the beginning of our family on Bates Road. Now, what else?
You went to school in
Yeah. Went to Rocky River schools, and Bates Beach School was the first school we attended. And then I went to, they opened a new one in Rocky River called Bates School, and I got to go there for 2 years. And then we went to the junior high, the old junior high, which used to be the high school, and then Rocky River High School. Later on, I went to Ashland College, which is now Ashland University. And after that, moved to New York to start a career. So that's the beginning.
Tell us about your beginning and what field in the career.
Okay. I had a major in radio and television. And so I was a communications major, and decided if I was going to do anything with the media, it would be in New York City, because that's where all the jobs were. And so I got married and to a gal from Long Island and moved there. We were there for probably the first 2 years looking for a job. I couldn't find anything. And I would take the train in every day to New York City and walk the streets. And then finally I got so bored with looking for jobs, because all the advertising agencies weren't hiring, the radio stations, the television station, nobody was hiring. And I just kept stopping for the 2-hour breakfast, and then I'd stop for the 2-hour lunch, and I kept getting bigger and bigger. But day after day I'd come home, and finally one day my new brother-in-law, who worked for the airlines at LaGuardia Airport, he worked for IBM, but he fixed the printers at LaGuardia Airport. He said, "You know, I can get you an interview with ABC." I said, "Oh, you can get me a job with ABC, right?" He goes, "No, I know the girl that works behind the ticket counter knows somebody who's related to somebody in the advertising department at ABC, and, you know, I can get you an interview." I said, "Okay, well, you do that." Sure enough, I get a call from ABC to come in and interview. So I went in the train for one more time and interviewed, and I got a job scheduling commercials. And it was a great job. I got promoted like 4 times in 2 years. I was really something special. And at that year, Howard Cosell was a big shot for ABC. He was doing, you know, Wide World of Sports and all the events. And he was making about $400,000 a year in 1972 or 73. And I was making $6,000 a year after all these promotions. So my career with ABC didn't last much longer. I finally went into sales with IBM and started selling for them. And
did that require a move on your part?
No, I was selling in New York City. My territory was the jewelry district. And I didn't know anything about selling, and I certainly didn't know anything about computers, but they said they would train me. And so as a result, about 9 months of training, They gave me a territory, and it was a jewelry district. It was 4 square blocks in New York City. And I called on everybody from the costume jewelry to the fine jewelers, to the Gemological Institute, which would grade all the jewelry, and we'd call on the Hasidic Jews that were the diamond cutters, to the Orthodox Jews that owned most of the jewelry stores, to the Jews that didn't even know they were Jews. It was a great experience. I had great success with them, and then later decided it was time to leave New York and get back to Ohio, where the roots were from, and we had 2 girls, and as our daughters were growing, I really wanted to get out of New York, get a place where we could start all over again in the Midwest, and so we moved back to Ohio and Rocky River. We settled down on Erie Road in Rocky River, and then later on we moved to Avalon, and so that was.
What did you do when you came back?
I got a transfer from IBM. They didn't want to let me go, and they certainly weren't going to pay for it, but Cleveland really wanted me. New York didn't want to lose me, and so they weren't going to let me go. So I finally said, look, I don't think the chairman of the board would want to know that the best salesman in the #1 region of IBM wants to go to the worst region in IBM, and you won't let him go to help out over there. So they finally said, okay, we'll let you go. And so I transferred to Cleveland. I was there for 2, maybe 3 years, and then decided, well, actually I didn't decide. I got an opportunity to start work for a leasing company. And they gave me a deal I couldn't refuse. So I thought, okay, this is my big break. So after months of agonizing, I finally decided they put the guarantee in writing. They were going to offer me some great money, and I was going to open up an office for the leasing company in Cleveland, and I could work out of my home. And so I left IBM and started working for them. And 2 weeks later, IBM made a big announcement that they were going into the leasing business. So I got a call, and they said, got some bad news. We've changed our mind. And that's the same look I had on my face. So as a result, I said, wait a minute, you're telling me I don't have a job, my wife doesn't work, and you are okay with that? And they said, yeah, we're okay with that. So that was the end. And a good friend of mine said, you know what, let's go on vacation. I said, I just lost my job. I'm out of work. I have a wife that doesn't have a job. I have little kids. I said, are you kidding me? He goes, all right, we'll drive. We'll drive to Minnesota. We'll rent a cabin. It's like $50 a night. You'll have a great time. And I said, are you nuts? You're not listening to me. I have no source of income. And finally, he talked me into it. So we drove to Minnesota, and we stopped at an old fraternity brothers of his. And this guy was asking me my story, and I told him. And he said, the same thing happened to me. And he said, as a result, I started my own company, and here's how I did it. And you could do the same thing in Cleveland. And he said, you really ought to look into it. And so I got back, and I thought, well, I'm going to try this. It was brokering computers. And I started, and it just took off. And as a result, it was the best thing ever happened. You taking that trip to Minnesota. So everything has a way of working out for the best. And so now
And
20.
your company is?
Great Lakes Computer. 27 years later, still doing well. We just had the best year we've ever had this year, and last year was the best year we ever had, so it just keeps getting better and better.
What is it that you specifically do
Now?
now?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Vouch for that.
I have a brother-in-law that runs the business, and I kind of turned the reins over to him a little bit at a time over the past couple of years, until about a year and a half ago. I said, you're running the show. And each year I'd stay a little bit more away from the company, and so that last year I spent the whole year away from it. And so it's going and growing. But as far as the company, we're in the maintenance business. We started in brokering equipment, and then we migrated into maintaining equipment, repairing printers and mid-sized computers, IBM computers and IBM printers, and then HP printers. And then we transitioned into another division that did network support. small servers, chain servers, and then we could start doing it remotely and doing it nationally. And so we do a lot of work for chain stores like Drug Mart. We do all of their support throughout Ohio. But we do a lot of government work too. We do Air Force bases. There's Army bases and all kinds of government projects where they have servers. They want somebody to maintain and support it, and we do that. And where we can't be there with feet on the ground, we'll outsource it to a company that we know will get feet on the ground. So, just kind of taking them from getting that comfort level of support and service to at a good price. So, as a result, it's been very successful.
And how many employees do you have now?
Right now we have about 25, and we went as high as 50, and realized that it wasn't the size, because the bigger you got, the more the government wanted to be involved in what you were doing, and the mandates and everything else. So we kind of got it down a little bit, and we're holding them the line until this economy starts turning a little bit. But we can see bringing more people on to support us, and so.
Very, very successful story.
Yeah.
All from a little $50 a day camp
Yeah.
in Minnesota.
Well, as we said, as we started the business, I worked out of the bedroom of my home, and when my brother lost his job with Medical Mutual, he was the vice president at Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medical Mutual, and he was looking for an opportunity and really wanted to join me. And I thought, I can barely feed my family, and how are we going to do this? And so we talked about it finally and brought my brother in, and that was the next big move. We moved to the basement of my house, and then he brought a lot of great ideas and new growth opportunities for us that I hadn't thought of, and he had 1,000 ideas, and he only a couple of them really took off, but when they did, they really took off. So he was an ideas guy, and he really brought a lot of value to the business. And then later on, he went into another business, software business, and we parted company. But it was good. Works out well for everybody.
That's great. Usually, family organizations and connections either go or they don't go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're very lucky that it
Yep.
works out that way.
Yep.
That's great. So now you are family of 4 in Rocky River here, and you have a successful business that you've started and expanding. And take us to the next step. What happened whenever that time frame was when you had an office, or you were up in maybe 15 or 20 people? What were you doing outside of work?
Oh. Well, we eventually moved to Westlake and started renting space there, and bringing on employees and growing the business from there. And as the employees were added on, obviously the business was growing, and so we had more opportunities, and that brought more success. But as far as what I did with my spare time,
Mm-hmm.
well, when we were in early stages of the business, I relished, especially when I was working out of my home, I relished the time with my kids. And so, if I always had a strategy that when the opportunities were there at work, and if it was 12 or 14 hours, stay on the phone, because the West Coast was still open when the East Coast was closed, and most of it was phoning and doing some deliveries myself, and taking products and refurbishing them and then getting them as new as possible, and then delivering those products. And so I took pride in doing that and doing good quality service. But when I wasn't busy and it was slow, I enjoyed the time at home with the kids. And so many a day I'd be out in the front yard playing baseball with the kids, because in Rocky River all the yards were so small that you didn't have big parks that we were playing on close by, so we'd just play in the front. But all the neighborhood kids would come home from school and we'd start playing, baseball or base running or something. But and that's I think was the best policy I had, to start enjoying it when it's slow and work it when it's busy. And got involved with my church and in Bay Village, and became a deacon in the church, and eventually an elder in the church, and that was really important to me too. And so as a result, my business became I think my business grew because of my faith, and not because I was a righteous man, but because I knew who the boss of the company was. And to this day, you know, we still consider God to be the head of the company. And so our company tithes. And as a result, Freddie Corey, Small Business News, introduced me to this concept. And he said, you know, it's important to tithe. And I said, I do tithe. And I do know the importance of that. But he said, well, but what about your business? I said, what about my business? He goes, your business should tithe. And I said, well, that's a separate entity. He goes, you're the head of the business. I said, no, God's the head of the business. He goes, well, it's what God gave you. And I said, well, I didn't want to do that one at all. I think that was harder than tithing, which is a hard challenge for anybody to do. But when the business started tithing, I said, you know what, this is right. And so we started tithing, and my managers looked at me at first like I was a little bit crazy, but then they started getting into it, and we could see what we could do with the contributions and donations we were making, and the differences and the impacts we're making, getting them involved in what's good